a perfect square trinomial is where our brackets or our factors are the same. So I have something like x plus 2 times x plus 2, which we can write as x plus 2 to the power of 2, okay, because we have the same bracket. So I can write it as to the power of 2. So that is where we use the same numbers for our sum and our product. So the first example is x squared plus 4x plus k. So basically what I'm asking is, what are two numbers? So my sum is 4, and my product, I don't know what it is yet, but my sum is 4. So I need to figure out two numbers that are identical that add up to 4. 2 and 2, right? Now, when I multiply those two same numbers, what do I get? What's 2 times 2? 4. So my product has to be 4, which means my k is going to be 4. So my new trinomial is going to be x squared plus 4x plus 4. Now, can you guys factor this trinomial for me? What's my product and what's my sum? Olivia? Okay, so two numbers I multiply to 4 and add to 4. What would it be? Olivia? 2. So what is it going to be like when it's factored? What's my factored form going to look like? Jade?
X squared.
Not x squared. What's the numbers that we used?
Oh, sorry, 2x plus 4.
Nope. Alicia?
X plus 2 squared.
Yep.
Wait, how did you get 4? Oh, never mind.
Because our two brackets are going to be, one of them is going to be x plus 2, because we use 2, and the other one is going to be x plus 2.
I was doing the.
That's why. Okay, so this is my answer. That's my factored answer. X plus 2 to the power of 2. Now I have my next one. I have x squared plus 2x plus k. So again, I don't know my product, but what's my sum? 2. So what are two identical numbers that add up to 2? 1 plus 1. Thank you, Cynthia. So now I need to take those same two numbers and multiply them together. So what's 1 times 1? So what's my product going to be? 1. So my new trinomial is going to be x squared plus 2x plus 1. So if I were to factor that, how would my brackets look like? Olivia? Well, hold on. What numbers did we use?
Oh, sorry.
So we're going to get x plus 1. Yep. Exactly. Or x plus 1 to the power of 2. Yes, Emma?
Could you go over how we had how you did the numbers and the perfect split? They don't get perfect square trinomial.
I'll do the next one similar. So now my next one I have is x squared plus 8x plus k. Again, I don't have my product because I don't have a number for k. So my product stays blank. But my sum is going to be what number? Emma? Yeah. So for a perfect square, my sum for 8, I need to pick two numbers that are the same that add up to 8. Olivia? 4. What do you guys notice about perfect square trinomials? Is my middle term always odd or even? It's always going to be even. Okay, so my middle term is most of the time is always going to be even. Which means, what is my product going to be? Cynthia? Nope. Nope. Abby? 16. Because I need to take those two 4s and multiply them together. So my product is 16, which means my trinomial is x squared plus 8x plus 16. If I were to factor this, what would my factor look like? Or my factored form look like? Olivia? Yep.
Extra like square.
Because remember, our brackets consist of the numbers that we use to get our product and our sum. Okay. So what would my brackets be in this one over here, Jade?
X plus 4, X plus 4.
Yep.
X plus 4 over 2.
Yep.
Question.
Yep.
How will you know when, like, for example, 16 is negative or the 8 is negative?
It depends on if my middle term is negative or positive. But even then, with a perfect square trinomial, the last term is always going to be plus a number. And the reason being is because if I take the square of a negative number in a bracket, what does it always give me? If I were to ask you guys, what's negative 4 to the power of 2? What would that be? Positive 16. So the last number is always going to be positive because any negative number squared is always going to be a positive number. Are you stretching your hand or do you have a question?
That was pretty good. So you know how it's x plus 4, where is it always squared?
Yep.
So
Because-
whenever
yep.
the product is squared.
Yep, so whenever you have two numbers together, or two brackets that are the same, you're always going to have that square on the top.
So it's always the square root of the product. Like
Technically, yeah. So your brackets, so if you think about it, what's the square root of 16? 4. What are inside of my brackets?
4.
4. The square root of 1 is 1, and the square root of 4 is 2. And as you can see, the first one had 2's in the bracket, the second one had 1's, and my last one here had a 4. Okay, so we'll do the next one together, and then you guys will do the last one on your own. So what is x? So what is my k value in this case? Again, our product we don't know yet, but we know our sum is going to be 10. So again, we're dealing with perfect squares, so they have to be the same number. Emma.
So it's going to be 25.
Yep, because 5 plus 5 is 10, and 5 times 5 is 25, which means our product is going to be 25. So my trinomial is x squared plus 10x plus 25. So now what are my brackets going to be? Cynthia.
X plus 5 times x plus 5
Mhm.
or x plus 5 squared.
Perfect. So remember how yesterday you guys were asking me how I got that negative number on the outside of the bracket when I was completing the square? It comes from this. So we have the positive on the outside. So I'm going to use this guy. So when I factor out so we're going to use x squared plus 10x plus 25. So when I complete the square, I know that my bracket's going to be x plus 5 squared because that's what happens when I factor that trinomial. Okay? What did we say 5 to the power of 2 was? 25. So on the outside here is going to be minus and then the 5 squared again, which is why I get that negative on the outside to complete the square. So technically my answer when I complete the square is x plus 5 squared minus 25. And we'll figure that out when we get to the to example 3. So this is just a side note. Okay, so do the next one and let's see what you all get. So we have x squared plus 16x plus k. What is that trinomial supposed to be? Abby?
Like you want me to do it?
Sure.
So the product, the sum is 16 and then the product is 64 because 8 times 8 is
Yep.
8 is 16, so it's x plus 8 squared.
Perfect. So Abby said we got x plus 8 times x plus 8, which is the same thing as saying x plus 8 squared. And as you can see, for our examples in the second question that you are going to do on your own, and then we'll discuss about it, all of my numbers in the middle are all going to be even numbers. Okay? So remember, when you're working with perfect squares, one thing you'll notice is that my middle number is always going to be even. Sure. Well, right now we're working with perfect squares. So I want you to take like 5 minutes to do example 2. Try to figure out your k values, and then we'll take it up in 5 minutes. So who wants to help me out with the first one? Abby.
So 11 plus 11 is 22, so we put the sum is 22.
Mhm.
And then 11 times 11 is 121. And so the product is 121.
Perfect.
And then x plus 11 squared.
Yep. So my product is 121 because 11 times 11 gives me 121. And since Abby factored, we got x plus 11 squared. Perfect. Now, does someone want to do the next one for B? Cynthia.
So the sum is 24. And
Okay.
12 plus 12 is 24. So then the product would be 1.
Perfect. So what's my brackets going to look like? Or what's my factor going to look like?
Brackets x plus sum 44 squared.
Oh, what's the numbers that we used?
Oh, sorry, 12.
Yeah.
You distracted me. She was talking while I was trying to explain.
Plus 144, which means my factored is going to be m plus 12 to the power of 2. Okay. So now let's go to C. We have something with a negative in the middle. Who wants to take a stab at this? Camilla?
I did x plus negative 3
Mhm.
twice, and that gave me negative 6x.
Perfect.
So it's x minus 3 to the power 2.
Yep. So my product is going to be 9 because negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. So as Camilla said, I'm going to get x squared minus 6x plus 9. So my factor form is going to be x minus 3 squared. We all got that far, right? We're good? Okay. Now D is a bit different only because we have a number in front of my x squared, okay? When I have a number in front of my x squared, what is my product going to be? Sarah,
The last number times
the first number.
4 times whatever.
Yeah. So my product is going to be the 4 multiplied by whatever my k value is going to be. So my sum here is negative 12. So what are two numbers that add up to negative 12, Sarah?
Negative 6.
Okay. Plus negative 6, which gives me negative 12, which means my product should be negative 6 times negative 6, which gives me 36. So if my product is 36 and my product is given by 4 times the k value, what should k be?
And then you times it by 4.
Yeah.
144.
Nope.
9.
So 4 multiplied by a number should give me 36. So I'm going to write this out like this. So it should be, so I have my product is equal to 4 times k. Yep. So 36 is equal to 4k divided by 4, which means my k value should be 9.
Wait, how did you get the k value?
What's your x?
Just say 36
Yeah.
divided by 12.
Or 36 divided by 4.
That would have been a lot easier. So can we do 30, like divide it by 4 every time?
Yep.
Or, like whatever the number is, just to make life easier.
So in this case, what would my factored form be?
Is it 2x minus 3 negative 2?
So the way she got it is, what do you notice about 4 and 9?
All of it
Yeah.
is divisible by
Not divis. You guys are like on the right track. It's not, doesn't have,
Divide it all by 4?
you can square root both of them.
Oh.
Okay? So what's the square root of 2x squared? 2x. So the square root of 4x squared is 2x. And what's the square root? What's the square root of 9? 3. So the reason why it's 2x minus 3 squared is because the middle term is what? Positive or negative? Negative, which is why you have,
I don't know. How did we get 2x and 3?
you have to take the square root of 4x squared and the square root of 9.
Why do we have to get these square root?
Because it's a perfect square trinomial.
But if we don't do that, we can still get it though, like by using the product and sum of the two squares.
Do we have to square root everything?
Yep.
So 4x square rooted 12.
Oh.
So you have to square root the first term, which is 4x squared, and square root 9.
Oh wait, so we don't have to square root 12? Why not?
Because my first term and my last term help me create that negative 12.
Okay.
So now we can actually get on to the perfect square stuff.
So brackets would be 2x
Minus 3 because my 12 in the middle, is it positive or negative?
negative.
Yeah, which is why you have the 2x minus 3 in the middle.
Okay.
So now let's see if we can do the factored form.
So x minus 3 is not.
Square. What's that?
You just did.
So Cynthia, you square root the first term. So the square root of 4x squared is 2x, right? What's the square root of 9? 3. Is my 12x in the middle positive or negative? Negative, which is why we're going to have 2x minus 3 to the power of 2.
Oh. Okay, thank you.
So now let's see if we can complete the square. So
Wait, what does completing the square mean?
basically putting it into vertex form. So completing the square, I'm going to write it here. So completing the square is equal to vertex form. So let's complete the square for this guy over here.
I want this one.
So what we're going to do for completing the square is we're going to focus on the first two terms. Okay? So that's step one.
Step 1.
We're not factor. Completing the square is a weird form of factoring. You're not going to factor the trinomial.
Okay. I'm following.
Yeah. So I'm going to write again step 1.
Are we gonna write the steps?
Yep.
Oh, they're already in the corner.
Yeah, but I don't know if they're complicated language or not.
Yeah, it's probably.
So put a bracket between the first two terms. So in this case, I have y is equal to x squared plus 6x plus 8. So your brackets are going to go between x squared and 6x. Step 2 is going to be trying to find a perfect square trinomial with what the bracket is. So technically, I'm going to write it out differently now. So step 2 is we're going to use our brackets to find a perfect square. So I'm going to write this differently. I'm going to write y is equal to x squared plus 6x. We're going to do what we did in the first examples. We have to find this k value plus k. So this is all in a bracket. And then that positive 8 is just going to be on the outside. You're not going to touch it yet. And the reason why I'm writing it like this is because we know how to find k already, because we already did it.
Use brackets, find perfect square. How do we find the perfect square?
So remember what we did at the beginning where we had to find k?
Yeah.
We're doing the same thing. So we're going to write x squared plus 6x plus k, because we want to find a perfect square with 6x.
Oh, yeah.
So what is my product here? So then step 3 is going to be find k. So step 3 is going to be find k. So I have y is equal to x squared in brackets. Make sure the x squared plus 6x plus k is in brackets. Make sure that's in brackets.
Wait, what's the middle thing? Does that say fox? Oh, it's 6x. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Oh,
Yep.
After step 3, do we just leave it at that, like the x plus 3 squared plus 8? So that's just like the.
Nope, there's one more step. It's the weird step. So how do I find k? We did this already. How do we find k?
Use like the product and sum on like this cross.
Yep. So what is my sum here? Can someone tell me what my sum is for my bracketed trinomial? Olivia? 6. We don't know my product yet. So remember, because it's a perfect square, my numbers have to be the same. So what are two numbers that are the same that add up to 6, Olivia? 3. So 3 plus 3 is 6, which means my product has to be 3 times 3. Perfect. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to rewrite what I have. So I know that my perfect trinomial is going to be x squared plus 6x plus 9. Okay, and this is where it gets weird. So we know our k is 9. But on the outside of the bracket, you know how I had that minus number randomly on the outside of the bracket? That's just the square of 3. Okay, so I'm going to have a minus 9 out here as well, because these two is what make a perfect square. And then the plus 8. So whatever you have on the inside of the bracket as your k has to be on the outside of the bracket as well, except it's just a negative.
okay.
So this negative 9 is just a negative of k.
Why do we have a negative 9 there? Okay. So then after that, we put. And then. It's positive. I said negative.
Because if I take the square root of if I take negative 3 and square it, what do I get?
Negative.
So when we complete the square, it's just a rule out. It's never been explained properly. So whenever you're completing the square, that k value that you have, so we got 9 in this case, that negative 9 has to be outside of the bracket so that you get your vertex properly. Okay, because the vertex of this guy should be 3 and negative 1.
How do you get the vertex that quickly?
Because you're able to factor it.
Okay, so would that be for every single case? Every single case we put the number and then the negative number,
Mhm.
the opposite. It's
Yep.
every single case.
So the number on the outside of the bracket is just your negative k. It's just whatever k is, but in negative form. So then step 4 is write your final answer.
I understand. Got it.
Okay, so far we have y is equal to x squared plus 6x plus 9 minus 9 plus 8. Just write your final answer. So x squared plus 6x plus 9. How do I write that as a factored trinomial? What were the numbers that we used? 3. So it should be x plus 3 squared. And then what's negative 9 plus 8?
Oh, wait, no, minus 1.
Negative 1. So your vertex form is going to be y is equal to x plus 3 squared minus 1.
Okay. Okay. How did you get the x plus 3 squared?
So Emma, when I factor out x squared plus 6x plus 9,
So we factor that.
yeah, what numbers did we use down here? We used 3 and 3, right? So because we get x plus 3 and x plus 3,
I
you
understand
have to
that.
write x plus 3 squared. So I'll give you guys another one before we do B. So I'm going to write it up here. So complete the square.
Solve the outside bracket thingy?
Yep.
Okay, sweet. I understand that.
Okay, so try this one, the one at the top. Complete the square for y is equal to x squared plus 8x plus 12, or plus 2, sorry. Take a couple. Okay, what's the answer? I just want the answer. Jade.
Y equals x plus 4 to the power of 2 minus 2.
Yep.
No, I didn't.
Minus 14, right? Okay. So what we're gonna do next is we have a trinomial that has a number in front of the x squared. Okay. So for B, we have a number in front of the x squared.
Oh, there.
So everything's gonna be done the same, except now we have to do something different. So what are we focusing on to complete the square? The first two. So we're gonna bracket off the first two. Okay, is x squared by itself or does it have a number in front of it? Okay. So when you have a number in front of the x squared, you need to common factor. You're not gonna common factor a variable, you're just gonna common factor a number. So between 2 and 20, what is the greatest common factor between 2 and 20? 2. We're just focusing on the number, not the variable.
So then we would divide that by.
Yeah. So we're dividing not 2x, we're not focusing on the variable, just the number. So here's just factor a number. Just factor the number, not the variable. And I'll put it in like underline.
Double brackets? No.
Nope. No double brackets. So what is left in that bracket then? If we factor out a 2. Olivia? X squared minus 10x. So now we can do what we did before. Yes.
Why did we factor out 2?
Because we always want x squared to have nothing in front of it. Makes your life easier. Okay. So now that we have x squared minus 10x in my bracket, now I have to rewrite it as 2 times x squared minus 10x plus k plus 11.
I got that.
So now let's focus on the trinomial. Yes.
I didn't do the first part.
So you always want x squared to not have a number in front of it, so we have to
No,
factor out the 2.
Never.
Okay.
Do we have to, if we don't do that, are we gonna get it wrong? Because I didn't do it, but we still have like x minus 10.
Yeah.
But the vertex part might be
I
wrong.
just added plus k in the first.
Do you know that last number you have?
Yeah.
That plus or minus
Yeah,
whatever?
it's like pretty.
So let's see if you got the same. We'll see. Keep your answer now and let's see if you got the same as us. So what is my k going to be? Olivia?
Wait, would it be negative?
K will always be positive. Yeah. So my sum is negative 10. So I know that two numbers that add up to negative 10 is negative 5 minus 5, which is negative 10. So my product is going to be negative 5 times negative 5, which gives me positive 25, which means my k is positive 25. Because my k is 25, what comes outside of that bracket? Plus 11. I gotta move this over.
So then do we just leave the 2 when we're doing everything?
No, this is where the 2 comes in.
Okay.
So, first of all, what's my trinomial going to be factored into? What's my bracket going to be? I think, Camilla, you said it already. When I factor this trinomial, what am I going to get? Ashton?
X minus 5 squared minus 14.
Nope. You got the minus 5 squared, right?
Okay, so we would just keep the 2 down.
So, what did I factor out from the beginning? 2. because that 25 is now associated with that factor of 2, I have to take that number outside of my bracket and multiply it by my 2. Because I factored out the 2, which means I divided everything by 2.
So now you have to multiply.
Now I have to
everything.
multiply it back by 2. What's negative 25 times 2?
You don't have it in the bracket, right? You don't.
Oh, you don't want
bracket?
it in the bracket, you got.
So the trinomial is right in the bracket, that factor is fine. But because you took out a 2 at the beginning, that negative 25 that's left on the outside, you have to recompensate for it by multiplying it by 2.
Okay.
So what's,
That's what's inside the bracket.
you don't touch what's inside the bracket. It's negative 50 plus 11. So what is negative 50 plus 11?
10 plus 11.
Yep.
Okay,
Minus 39.
I'm following.
So that would be your vertex 1.
Negative 20.
2 stays in the
39.
Confusion, eh? That's the only difference, is when you have a number in front of the variable, you have to multiply it by that negative number outside the bracket. So if I actually do it on Desmos, we can check if we're right. So I'm going to pull up the thing in Desmos. So this is my standard form. Did we get that as my vertex when we did it? Yeah.
Yes.
So we did it right. Good job, guys.
Yay.
Okay. Okay, I don't want to do D because I don't want to confuse you guys more, because there can be decimals, so we're not going to do D.
Are we have decimals on the test?
No.
Okay. I appreciate
I wonder how much is left in this. I will always let you, I think I'll always let you work with whole numbers. Okay, so we're not going to do C. That's the same thing as A, basically. What I want you to do is I want you to write this quadratic function by completing the square. So I want you to complete the square for 4A.
So we gotta do all the things that we did.
Yep. Follow example B, because it had a number in front of the x squared. So what, 5 minutes is fine? Yeah, 5 minutes should be more than enough. practice on the homework. So we have 2x squared plus 16x plus 1. So as I can see from the workaround and from what I saw, you did the first thing, which is correct. You factored out the 2. So you got x squared plus 8x plus 1. Okay, and then the next thing you had to do was figure out what your k was. So we knew our sum was 8. So two numbers that are the same that add up to 8 are 4 and 4, which is equal to 8. So my product has to be 4 times 4, which is 16, which means my k value is going to be 16. So I get is equal to 2 times x squared plus 8x plus 16, and we have to have that minus 16 outside of the bracket and the plus 1. So because we factored out the 2, I have to multiply that negative 16 by 2. So I'm left with 2 times x squared plus 8x plus 16 minus 32 plus 1. And now I can complete the square on the inside. So remember, both of my factors were 4. So I can write it as 2 times x plus 4 squared. And then negative 32 plus 1 is minus 31. So we know my vertex is h and k. So h is always going to be opposite of what it seems. So what's my vertex going to be, Jade? So my axis of symmetry is always the x value of my vertex. So can someone tell me what my axis of symmetry is going to be? Ashton, what would it be? The x part of my vertex. So my axis of symmetry is going to be x is equal to negative 4. So to determine if we have a maximum or a minimum, it depends on if my graph is opening up or down. So let's see if you remember from unit 1 what it would be. So is my graph 2x squared plus 16x plus 1, is that opening up or down? Up. Which means do I have a minimum or a maximum? Minimum.
Mr. Garcia.
Yep.
Why is the axis of symmetry negative?
Oh, negative 4. Whoops. Good. All right. So hopefully that didn't confuse you too much today. So you guys now can